The mistake the opposition has made in today's debate is not understanding the imperative, but also not understanding the comparative. What we tell you on our side of the house is that there is a woeful lack of engagement with the substantive material we give you on the pragmatic. They still, in response to that, will tell you they will prioritize profits. They will prioritize profit rights over the individual lives. We say the point at which one company, Amgen, can literally sacrifice the lives of thousands of people who need kidney dialysis just so that they can make a profit, we say that is not something that they can principally stand for on their side of the house. We say there is not enough engagement with the intricacies of that principle. In this speech, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to do some procedural analysis on the model. After that, 3 questions. First, I'm going to dissect the principle. Second, I'm going to talk about who has better means, i.e. dissecting the process by which people arrive at innovation. After that, I'm going to talk about the ends, who actually has more innovation in the long term. But first, let's talk about the model. And it's funny that there's an amazing lack of engagement in the intricacies of the model. So let me clear something up. There's a key difference between patents and patent protection. What we tell you is having a patent is saying, I made this, I can put my name on it and get credit for it. The patent protection is me saying I'm the sole proprietor of this object and I am the sole right to litigate and literally sue you into the ground if you try and even do so much as replicate my design to like the nth degree. We say they don't interact with the distinction. So when they say that, oh, no one gets credit for anything on our side of the house, no, engage with the analysis Sonia and Millen bring you, that material which I'm bringing down to our side of the house. Now, second point of clarification is that the last speaker of the opposition stands up here and says, well, we can solve the problems that team proposition is trying to propose. Well, when really what they do is just provide you a list of alternative solutions that, one, concede the principle, because if reform is needed, that means that property rights aren't absolute. 2, they don't explain why that's mutually exclusive. There's no reason why those things can't exist in conjunction with our advocacy. And if we prove that doing it in conjunction with our advocacy would actually be met better, that's a reason to vote for the government. The first question I'm going to address is the principle. Here's what we tell you. We say that providing the overall societal welfare always is going to outweigh ensuring giant corporations maintain their bottom lines or can ramp up prices. Sonia brings you 2 pieces of matter, which I'm going to continue to rebuild upon now because they don't engage with them. We say that progress requires a mutual respect for all individuals, which therefore is an obligation to hold the collective welfare if I'm going to enter into a field like medical technology where I should be helping people. The distinction, and what they fail to do on their side of the house with the principle, is contextualize it in a time where property rights isn't as black and white as they try to paint it. So I'm going to give you an example. This isn't like in the traditional archaic sense. If I have a plot of land and you try and encroach on it, I can take up arms and defend you off. But if I attain that plot of land by displacing other native people or destroying the environment, we say that's A, not a just means by which that was achieved, and 2, I'm probably also hindering upon the rights of other people to access that land. Please engage with the intricacies. Their principle can be summed up as property rights are sacrosanct in all definitive instances. If it's mine, I should have it. A, patents versus patents protection. B, look at the means by which these things are achieved. Underneath this, finally, we say that even if you don't buy any of that, we best uphold the idea of advocating for the inventor, because under their side of the house, individuals in companies don't get the individual credit. So the person who invented Siri, i.e. Michael Phillips, that protection went to Apple, not to him. Additionally, small businesses are also not receiving that credit. So now I'm going to address the second question. This is the idea of who has better means. And there's a woeful lack of engagement, once again, on the pieces of material Sonia brings you. I'm going to make those larger right now. First, we tell you exploitation of labor, and we say you have to evaluate this almost as some kind of contractual obligation, i.e. when a company goes into the business of producing a good, they say, I'm not going to do things like exploit people in exchange for the government, respecting my right to do so. We say the point at which these corporations are taking these measures, where places like Foxconn literally have to install suicide nets in their buildings because the situations were so abject. We say that the means by which these corporations have attained their wealth is unjust. Second, what we tell you is the idea of competition. We say that these companies are actually using markets to deny platforms upon which other people can consume. This is the idea that Microsoft will patent an algorithm and a basic piece of computer language that is instrumental and fundamental to create other things, which has no reason to have a patent protection on it in the first place, and that precludes other innovation that could potentially be radically indifferent for it in the future. Additionally, what they tell you is underneath this, and the means, we'll just correct the means by doing things like sanctioning or doing things like doing things like restricting their profit. What we tell you, and Millen asks us in a POI, is why is that not a violation of property rights? We tell you that this is not like one person, like, without their property exercising violence on another. We say that if I'm using my patent protection, i.e. my property, to take away your property, we say that that is a clash and violence between property rights, and this debate is about the conflict between when those two things come into clash. And that's the only piece of engagement you see coming on their side of the house. We actually dissect this piece of analysis. The final question I'm going to ask is who has better ends, but first go ahead.
Okay, so if you say that we should take away companies' property rights because they abuse other people in the supply chain, what about companies that aren't like Foxconn, that like work responsibly?
Okay, thank you. I understand what you're saying. So one, you're not understanding the nuances of this argument. We're telling you that this is the idea about if you violate this contractual obligation that you have to not harm people in the process of gaining your wealth, that's something that you ought to not be able to claim legitimate claim to that property when other people are doing it for you. Secondly, we say that small businesses don't have the ability to outsource to these giant companies like Foxconn anyway, so they don't have the ability to exploit later to the massive sense. Thirdly, if you want to say that you stand up here and solve exploitated later somehow through your countermodel, which you don't explain why we can't also do that as well, we say that's not sufficient engagement. So the final question I'm asking is who has better ends? One, underneath innovation. Sonia brings you the material about qualitative innovation versus quantitative innovation. This is the idea of complacency in management. We say that right now in the status quo, large companies like Apple are not innovating because of altruism. They're innovating because simply they want profit. That's why when the next iPhone comes out, there's just a 2-point increase in the button, not something radically different. So we say that when we take away their patent protection, not the patent, just the protection, that forces them to become more adaptive in the market and actually compete with other industries like Microsoft and smaller ones like that. No engagement. Second point, underneath why we have better ends, I'm going to talk about small businesses. There are two pieces of material underneath this. First, it's the making of the product, and there's the marketing of the product. In the making of the product, we say that because of the nature of innovation and how intertwined it is, even if I want to make a chair, for example, I have to take out smaller patents for things in order to actually get there. So you can see in instances like Cisco, where they file $13 million lawsuits against smaller companies over having 200 smaller patents on frivolous things that don't actually impact the outcome of the actual product. We say that's one trade block in the way. Second, we say it's the actual marketing of the product. We say that right now, Apple and Microsoft engage in $100 million lawsuits against each other because Microsoft or Samsung wants to use the touchscreen and Apple isn't okay with that. So they throw money at each other. We say when this happens, there's a trade-off with R&D and they can't actually use that money that they're using for litigation into R&D. The response to this is somehow there's no money right now in the status quo. No, we say companies like Pfizer still have 42% profit margin. Companies like Apple still get $12 for every $1 they spend. And we tell you that the point at which companies can literally make $6,000 in profit for every 10 cents, that's not something we pragmatically stand for. Because we come to under the consistent principle that simply saying because it's mine, I should have it is not nuanced enough to analyze today's debate. That's why you vote for the government. Thank you.